Hi, and welcome to my sewing room. We are based here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and I am super excited to share with you a really cool little project that we will be making on the Brother PR1055 Entrepreneur Pro machine today. This machine is capable of embroidering on just about anything. If you can get it in a hoop and get it on the machine, I'm pretty sure you can embroider on it. We'll be using a few different accessories that are not standard with the machine, but will definitely make our project quicker and easier. And if this was a project that you needed to make a whole team worth of, don't worry. These accessories are going to make that process as quick and painless as possible. So, without further ado, I'll show you our starting point, which is this great little jacket. It's approximately a youth size 9-10. It's not the smallest jacket out there, but definitely a little jacket that's going to be a little bit harder to manage. And we want to be able to get a name and a number for our little player on the back of this jacket. I think we will be able to do some stellar work using the built-in designs on the Brother PR1055X. So without further ado, I'll introduce you to the accessories we'll be using, some of the other tools and notions, and then we'll head over to the machine and build out our project all on the machine without any required software. So come to the table with me and we'll talk through these accessories. So today we are going to be using the versatile magnetic flash frame or magnetic flash frame in the 5x7 size. We already have the F driver installed on the machine. If you'd like to see a video of how to attach that driver, check out this video here for installation tips and tricks and to learn more about this cool hoop. We will also be using the tubular frame table. This great little table is going to help support this project and keep this hoop from bouncing as we embroider. If this hoodie was a completely enclosed hoodie without a zip up the front, it would be even more imperative that we have something to help hold up this really awkward project because we won't be able to lay it flat on the wide table included with the PR1055X. If you would like to see a video for installation on the tubular frame table, check out this video here. Next up, let's talk about some of the other tools and notions we'll be using. Tape measure is always handy to have in hand. I love my little brother one. And we will need to be marking our jacket so we get our embroidery in the right place. I love using the Chaco liner pen. This comes in a variety of colors. I'm going to be using white as it will show up great on the fabric I'm working with today. But it's very easy to get a very accurate line for placement, and we can use that when we use the camera on board the machine to help get our project exactly where we want it to be embroidered. We'll need a set of scissors, as we'll be doing a little bit of applique work today. And my go-to scissors for trimming applique in the hoop, the OESD double curved scissors. Love those little guys. Lots more ways to get applique done in the hoop, but today that's the method we'll be using. Lastly, we need to stabilize our project. As with all embroidery, stabilizer is absolutely required, both for stitching the project and having a successful stitch out, and for washing and wearing as you carry on with this project. The embroidery I'm doing today is quite dense, and I know that I'm putting some very heavy stitching on a knit jacket, so I'm going to be using a heavyweight cutaway. My jacket is a dark color, and I'm going to go with the black OESD heavyweight cutaway right next to my fabric. Then for a little bit more stability in the hoop as we're stitching, we don't want any pulling and puckering as we're embroidering, I'm going to add a second layer of stabilizer, and this time a tearaway. This will come out over the lifetime of the project, but it will be in there while we actually do the embroidery to help support those stitches while we're stitching. So we'll be using a medium weight tearaway from OESD, again in black. It's a dark colored sweater. And then as we're doing some applique work, I'm using quite a lightweight cotton for my applique numbers today. So I'm going to be backing that lightweight cotton with some fusible woven. actually backed the lightweight cutaway, or the fabric with a white version, but depending what you're up to, this fusible woven is available in white or black. Last up, the other lettering I'm putting on the jacket is a bright white name on the dark navy background. And I don't want any of my fabric color showing through. I want nice crisp letters in the font that is just embroidered and not appliqued. So I'm going to be using a piece of top cover to help cover the fabric and reduce the show through that happens with darker fabrics in light colored stitch outs. So we're using a piece of white top cover as well. Now that we know what tools we're using for today's project, let's get our sweater prepped and our design prepped on machine. So let's figure out our stabilizer and our placement, then we'll go over to the machine and build our design. Well, on the table, I've got the sweater laid out. If this sweater was enclosed, I would not be able to unzip it and open it all the way, so you just have to manage any bulk that's happening when the sweater is folded flat. We're working on the back of the sweater, and generally you don't want to be too high up and close to the neckline when you're working on a sweater. But for what I'm building today, I'm going to build a design that has a name in the dark part of the fabric and a number just below. So I'm actually going to be using that seam line on the yoke as part of my placement guideline. But really, I need to know where center is on this project so that I don't end up with my name all the way to one side and not centered. I want this to look crisp for whoever is going to end up wearing this little jacket. So this is where your tape measure comes in handy. And don't worry, it's not complicated math. I'm just going to measure the length of that seam. And find the midway point. And the Chaco liner has a lovely little roller wheel in it that's just going to put a little bit of chalk right down on my fabric at that midway point. You don't need to press hard with this, but it's a skinny enough tapered end that I can come in with a ruler and extend that line as far as I need to. My favorite thing about the Chaco liners on a project like this is as I embroider, just the bounce and the vibrations of that usually take almost all the chalk off. So oftentimes by the time you're done, there's no chalk left to remove. And even if there is, just a quick little dusting and a little bit of friction will take it right off for you. So now that I know where my center placement is on the front, I can get stabilizers adhered to the back. I do like to adhere stabilizers all while the fabric is off the machine, so I can slide everything into that versatile magnetic frame right on board the machine when we're ready to go. I'm going to flip the jacket over and just flatten it out gently. We don't want it stretched at this point. But what we can do is use a bit of ODIF 505 temporary fabric adhesive to hold our layers of stabilizer onto our jacket. You can either spray the stabilizer or spray the jacket. Just want to ensure you're not spraying too close to your machine, as glue and moving machines parts don't usually get along. Nice light coating. And the first layer of stabilizer that we're adhering can be cut a wee bit smaller. This piece is our heavyweight cutaway, and it's going to stay next to the fabric for the lifetime of this project. And I would suggest cutting your stabilizer generously. You want about an inch bigger all the way around than your hoop. But on a project like this where I might be centering a little bit low, might actually move that piece down because I know my name's going to be a little bit smaller and my number a little bit bigger. So I'm actually not wanting to center right on that line. Easy enough though to reposition because it is just temporary spray. Start with no puckers, no wrinkles. I'm going to come down just a smidge. And smoothing the stabilizer onto the fabric can help prevent puckers and wrinkles on the other side. I've got one more layer of stabilizer that we're going to adhere onto the back of the project. So same thing, a little bit of 505 to make a lovely little sandwich to hold these layers together. Believe me, moving all of this as one layer is going to be so much easier. You'll note this piece is a little bit longer. It needs to be long enough that it is definitely held in the frame as we're embroidering. Just for a visual, the stabilizer is extending about an inch all the way around outside where the magnets are sitting on this 5x7 versatile magnetic frame. One last double check before we're ready to take this over to the machine. We're going to flip that over, just make sure we don't have any crazy puckers that we should be worried about. And I think we'll be good. There's a seam there that is flipped a different direction than its friends. So I might go back and adjust that. Not that it will make a huge difference, but it might bug me temporarily. Jacket is marked and ready to take to the machine. But we're going to build the design before we get hooping figured out. Now that we're over at the machine, I'm going to make a couple changes right on board the machine before we even start building our design. I would like to turn on a feature called manual color sequence. This is a feature that I really enjoy using, and you might too. To turn on manual color sequence, we'll be going to user settings, which looks like a sheet of paper on screen. And we'll be scrolling to page 7 on the PR1055 screen to turn manual color sequence on. And this is going to allow us to tell the machine exactly which needle every step of our stitch out will take. And I find it just makes my setup a little bit more straightforward and easy, and definitely easier if I want to do repeats of something. So I'm going to hit OK. And then I can get in there and we'll start building out this design. So first thing I would like to stitch is the applique number. And I'm going to use one of the Applique monogram fonts. And for no particular reason, other than it's the year 2024, I'm going to pick the number 24. These Applique monogram fonts are technically designed to be great big standalone numbers, and they're quite big, and they could be used for numbers on an adult size jersey, but I'm working with a much smaller project today. So we're going to be able to size these down using that medium key and hit set. Now, this could be player number 2, but I think we should have player number 24 today. So I'm going to hit add, go back into the same font, and once more I can tell it medium, and I can hit set. Both of these designs have opened centered on screen, which is not exactly where we need them. So whichever design is selected will be the last one imported. And in this case, that will be the number 4. So using the move key, I can visually move this number over until I'm happy with the spacing. Right now, you'll note in my position that my position left-right has changed, but my vertical position is still 0. If I accidentally moved it this way, oops, that's going to be a little bit more work to deal with. but not impossible. We have some really phenomenal tools on board the PR1055X, including alignment tools to help get these items aligned exactly where we want them. If I have moved things around like this and I do want to use those alignment tools, I'll first have to select multiple items using the multi-select tool. And right now I just have 2 items on screen, so I'm going to choose the select all, and both those items will be highlighted red to show you which items are being used. There's way more here. You could pick and choose which items are being selected. I can hit OK. And now that those are both selected, I can use the alignment tools here. And these alignment tools are similar to what you would find in a word processing software or any image software you're familiar with. I would like the tops to be aligned. And just like that, I know those 2 items are the same height and they're going to look fabulous next to each other. I can hit OK. And again, if we're not quite sure on the spacing between the 2, right now if they're both selected, they're both going to move. But I can go and move, change the selection, and move that forward just a little bit closer. Oop, too close. Now I don't want these letters, these numbers to accidentally move apart from each other when I bring in my next object. So I'm going to again use the select tool or the multi-select tool to select all and hit OK. And then I'm going to group these 2 numbers. And that grouping icon will allow those items to keep their spatial relation to each other, but move as a pair on screen. This is going to make everything else we do so much easier. I love being able to group right on board the machine. Now that I'm happy with those letters, numbers at that size, I'm going to add my player name. Add will take you back onto your screen where you can go pick from anything on board the machine. I'm going to go into our fonts. And I think I'm going to pick this font 19. It looks like that nice, crisp, athletic kind of lettering. So the default size here of large, I think is going to be appropriate, but we can always size this up or down as necessary. Once we have our name spelled accurately, we can hit set. Now once more, I want to make sure these 2 items are centered over top of each other. Like I said earlier, we're going to put that name up in the top part of the jacket and the number down in the bottom. So once more, we can use our alignment tools after we multi-select. So I can hit the selection tool. Right now, just the 24 is selected. I can select all so that both Smith and 24 are selected. And again, we can go into the alignment tools. And we can align centers this time. So that now that 24 is directly center underneath our Smith. And once more, I can group that once it's centered. So this all moves around together, which will make everything so much easier. Once we're set up and ready there, I can hit End Edit. And from our End Edit screen is where we can start getting our placement of our jacket correct on the machine, as well as sequence which threads are happening when and when we need stops to manage both our applique and placing down some top cover. So first up, I would like to add a basting box. So a basting box is going to be a very loose stitch around the perimeter of our design. It will stitch first, but it's going to help hold our jacket to its stabilizer in the hoop. And if we were using any type of topping layer, this would help hold that in place as well. I like adding a basting box anytime I'm working with knits. Next up, I'm going to manual color sequence. So our manual color sequence will allow us to select every step of the way whichever color of thread we want to be using. I will be making the word Smith in white, and I will be doing red applique for the back of my jacket. Overall, doesn't really matter what color that basting line is going to be, and that is the first step on the machine. So I'm actually just going to leave that in the white thread. Or I could switch the first thread that we'll be using. Doesn't really matter. It's coming out again later anyway. The designs that are built in as applique on your board your machine will include symbols such as that trim line, that line, or just a tack down line, trim line, and a cover stitch. Those are the three parts to applique. So each of those will have that, and we will be stopping after every step of the way. So the hand at the beginning indicates a stop, or the machine will need to stop prior to doing that step. Because I'm doing my applique with red, I would actually like to do my placement line for my fabric, my tack down line, as well as my cover stitch, all with red thread. I currently have red thread loaded on needle 2. So I can tell the machine needle 2 for that step, needle 2 for the tack down, and needle 2 for my covering stitch. And again, we can go through those same steps for the next applique number. Needle 2, needle 2, needle 2. And after that number 4 is finished with the satin stitch applique around the exterior, we could go right into stitching the name Smith on the top of the jacket. What I know right now is that I would like to add a layer of top cover so I don't have any white show through or any dark blue show through on my white fabric. So I'm going to add another stop. And that will just allow the machine to stop and pause before I go. And even though it is set at number 1 right now, on that last step that says Smith, if I change it to number 1 right now, it will change the color to reflect the color that we have loaded on the machine in that needle. I'm going to hit OK now that I have my color steps figured out. With this particular machine, I am going to use the zoomed camera option to do my placement. This is ready to come on the machine. I can lift the flap. I'm just making sure the stabilizer from underneath is all staying flush. For this particular project, visually on screen, I have a rough idea of where the seam line for the yoke is between my 24 below and my Smith up above. And I can use my chalk line on my fabric as well as that yoke line to get really super accurate placement before I put these magnets down. So I can see exactly where I want this to land. If I needed to adjust at all at this point, I could turn on the move icon with the camera loaded. And the little green crosshair, which I turned on a moment ago, can be used to help align where we want to be. The amount of movement will vary depending whether you have the single arrow or double arrow or the triple arrow. The triple arrow is going to move the very most. So if you're close to where you want to be, you might want to choose the smaller movement. So I've got that green crosshair right on top of my chalk line. And at this point, I'm actually going to zoom out, take a picture of the hoop using the camera to make sure that I have my spacing up above and below accurate. And hit OK. And then we can take a photo of the hoop. Because our number 24 is not dead center, using the center on that yoke is not exactly what I want. Let me hit OK. It's going to move your project around. It's a great opportunity to check that everything is moving as it should be and nothing's getting caught. And then visually we can see exactly what's happening. As it stands right now, I think I'd actually like to pull this yoke a little bit further down. I've just about maximized my hoop space. So instead of moving the design around on screen, I'm going to go back into my camera. Remove the magnets. And pull this down by approximately 1 notch on the machine. Now that we have moved this to the place where we're happy, we haven't had to rehoop. It's not been a painful process, but we've been able to shimmy the jacket around until we get that really accurate placement that we were looking for. And now we can get started with actually doing the embroidery. I do already have a bobbin in the bobbin case and the machine's threaded. So I am ready to hit embroidery. And when we hit that embroidery screen, we'll see how many steps this design has. So there's 8 machine steps to it. We're at 6,732 total stitches and a total stitch time of 17 minutes. If you were looking to calculate how many of these you could do an hour, that would be some of the information you would be looking for. This obviously is going to take a little bit longer because we do have stops along the way, and that is to both place fabric for applique and trim fabric as we go. So it'll take a little bit longer than that. So to get started, I'm going to hit lock and then the green go button. This is going to stitch our basting box, which is the first step in stitching. Stitching your basting box is also a great opportunity to check and see that you are placed where you want to be before you carry on. I'm going to stitch the placement line for our number 2 for the applique fabric. This is the applique fabric I will be using. It's a red quilting cotton, which is what I had in our stash here. And you could use many other types of fabric for this applique stuff, but this would definitely work if it's the right color. So just to avoid any issues with this moving, we're going to make sure that this piece is covering fully. And I'm going to tape that in place using embroidery tearaway tape. Doesn't need a whole lot of tape, just enough to hold it down in place so it doesn't shift on us. Anytime you're doing embroidery, including applique, you do want to remove the hoop from the machine to trim your applique. It's difficult to get your scissors in and around the needle case, the needle bar assembly, so much easier and much safer to do so flat on a table. So I'm going to remove the hoop without removing the project in the hoop. So we want to keep this placement that we work so hard on. Pull the hoop towards me to remove from the driver, and then off to the side. And we'll come over and lay this flat on a table. So using my applique trimming scissors, this pair is from my OESD scissor set. I can trim nice and close, probably turning the hoop as I go. And those little bits of tape that we used to hold that down in the first place will be handy in a moment when we come back to do our second number. Most of the time when you are trimming applique, you do need to trim quite tight to the placement stitches so you don't have any little fibers showing through. If you don't love trimming applique in the hoop, you may want to check out some of our other videos on brother scanning cuts and cutting applique out that way. You can pre-cut your applique pieces and stick them down inside those placement lines and save yourself the step of trimming while your project is in the hoop. Once you've trimmed tight enough all the way around, you have that nice number 2, we'll be able to return this to the machine and carry on with the satin stitch finish on this number 2. And carry on with the next step, which is the cover stitch or the satin stitch around this number 2. With that number 2 done, I can carry on and stitch the placement line for my applique fabric for the letter 4. And once more, a little bit of tape to help hold my applique fabric down. And to trim it, I can again remove the frame. Lastly, you do need to cut into the inside of the number 4 to remove that center. You'll want to do this very carefully so you don't damage the base fabric underneath. Do so with a seam ripper just to get the hole started before you try and get your scissors inside. And each applique fabric is going to behave a little bit differently at this stage, so just use caution. Usually you can feel that fabric lift. And then I can see that my blue fabric underneath is just fine. This might be a letter that would be friendlier to pre-cut using the brother scanning cut. All trimmed, ready to return them to the machine to finish that great satin stitch outline. Always worthwhile checking when you're working with a tubular object or an object that has extra fabric dangling, so you're not catching any of that below the frame and over the free arm. Don't want to accidentally stitch something to your machine. The machine has paused now that it's done the number 4, and it's ready for that last step that I wanted to be able to take, and that is covering the area that will be stitched in white, the word Smith, with top cover. So top cover is almost like a plasticky film, but it's going to help prevent that dark blue from showing through those stitches. If you want nice, crisp, bright whites when you're stitching out, adding a layer of top cover can be immensely helpful. So again, I'm going to use a little bit of tape to hold this in place. Either end. And on screen, if you're having trouble getting to this point and you don't necessarily want to remove the hoop, I'm going to out to your needle change icon at the bottom, and we can park the hoop further away from the needle case. Just going to center it and pull it backwards just a little bit. Believe me, you'll have an easier time doing this without a camera in your way at home. Top cover doesn't need to be held down super firmly, but it does need to be held at the beginning while you get started stitching. So like you did okay, it's going to return the machine to where it was. And I can do this last stitch out. I personally love hearing that little ding 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 when the machine is all done embroidering and seeing the lights flash, letting me know that this project's done. It's ready for me to start building another embroidery project. I'm going to remove the magnets. And then I can gently slide my jacket off the machine and take it back to my prep table to remove the excess topping layer, the basting boxes, and the extra stabilizer. So gently removing that tape. The top cover is a tearaway product, so super easy to remove. You just want to hold on to those stitches and give the top cover a little tear. Don't worry if it didn't quite come out of some of the spots. We'll be able to remove it later on. Save the rest of that piece of top cover for my next word that needs to be white. But great news. My Essentials toolkit from OESD has a phenomenal little pair of tweezers in it that will allow me to get in and get those last few bits. If you're ever worried about these looking stringy afterwards, a little bit of heat and they'll shrink back. No problem. I love how crisp and bright white these letters are with that top cover underneath. I'm going to flip this over and see how tidy the back of the embroidery is. The nice thing about a basting box, and the basting included on board the machine, is it's really easy to remove if you clip the bobbin threads, usually in, on a design this size, maybe all four corners, maybe not. Sometimes you can get right under there with your scissors and pull the bobbin thread right out, which makes the top thread even easier to remove because it's such a long loose stitch. So that just helped hold all those layers together as we stitched. There was no more bobbin thread in there. That top thread should pretty much pull out all the way around. Might have one little knot at the very beginning that we need to give a little trim to. And that's ready to remove. Any of these other tails could be clipped. They're long. And that most bottom layer of stabilizer was a tearaway. So again, with tearaway stabilizers, you want to support the stitches and tear the tearaway. And tearaways usually break down and soften in the wash, so I'm not super worried about getting every last shred of the tearaway out. Just going to take out as much as I can. And lastly, we have that layer of cutaway stabilizer. We're going to trim our cutaway stabilizer about 1/4 to 1/2 an inch all the way around our project. It's just held on with 505 spray. This is going to come off in the wash, no problem, so not worried about that. Just want to fold back to make sure you're not cutting into your sweater as you go. Hold the stabilizer back so you can see what's being trimmed. And this heavyweight cutaway will definitely soften after a couple washes, so it won't bother whoever is wearing this little jacket later on. Usually I like to round those corners just a little bit so we don't have any little stabby corners when we're wearing it. Just like that. Excess stabilizer's been removed. Excess stitch H2O has been removed. That chalk line's going to come out in the wash, no problem. And there we have it. A great little athletic jacket for Smith, player number 24. Thank you so much for joining me making this cute little jacket for player number 24, a young person named Smith, on our Brother PR1055X using that versatile magnetic frame in the 5x7 size, built-in onboard lettering, and the tubular frame table to help hold up this heavier project. If you want to make more of these yourself, or you have a whole team of players to deck out, check out more videos here at my sewing room and get yourself a PR1055X and all the fun accessories to make your embroidery journey smoother and easier. If you enjoyed today's video and you want to see more, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the bell for notifications so you know when we release more content. If you know somebody looking to get into business, or you yourself are looking to get into business as an embroiderer, definitely get in touch here at my sewing room. Thanks so much for joining me, everybody.